When you hear the words light tank and War Thunder, you might immediately think of one thing: speed. And while speed is obviously one of the biggest advantages light tanks have, I think saying that's their main strength and their main focus is to be fast kind of undersells what these vehicles are actually supposed to do and what they're capable of. Light tanks aren't really designed to be the guy sitting on the front line, taking shots and trading shells with enemy tanks. Instead, they're designed around mobility, support, scouting, flanking, and disruption. If you're someone who doesn't necessarily want to be on the front line all game, and you'd rather be the player who's constantly moving around the battlefield, helping your team without always having to be in the middle of the fight, then light tanks might be exactly what you're looking for. But to really understand light tanks, you have to understand that your job isn't always to get kills. Sometimes, your job is to simply be annoying. This video is understanding War Thunder tanks. In this video, we're breaking down light tanks. Let's get into it. So first things first, I want to talk about the role of a light tank. Light tanks are generally much more suited towards players who enjoy a support-oriented play style. You're not necessarily the guy who wants to drive directly into the team and start trading shots. Instead, you're looking for opportunities. You want to find enemy positions, you want to scout, you want to flank, and you want to help your teammates secure kills. And most importantly, you want to create problems for the enemy team. You should be thinking, how can I make my team stronger without putting myself directly in front of the enemy? That's the mindset you want to play that will help you succeed in the role of a light tank. The best way I can describe a light tank is comparing it to Tracer from Overwatch. Tracer can absolutely get kills. If the player is good enough, she can even take out some pretty important targets throughout a match. But that's not necessarily what makes her dangerous. She's dangerous because she's constantly moving. She's appearing somewhere, shooting you, disappearing, and then showing up somewhere completely different. And while you're trying to figure out where she went, she's already behind you again. That's basically how I think you should approach a light tank. You don't necessarily want to sit in one position and fight the enemy head on. You want to make the enemy wonder, where's that light tank even at now? You flank, you reposition, you scout, you take a shot, and then you disappear into the mist. And then you show up somewhere completely different all over again. The longer you stay unpredictable, the more difficult you make it for the enemy team to focus on what they're actually trying to accomplish. One of the biggest mistakes you can make with a light tank is getting too comfortable in one position. You might get a really good flank and kill an enemy tank, and then you think, alright, I'm just gonna stay here now. Don't. You've already gotten what you wanted from that position. Move. Your biggest advantage is your ability to get around the battlefield faster than most, if not all, of the enemy team and your own. Use it. If you've been spotted, relocate. If you've taken a shot, relocate. If the enemy knows where you are, relocate. You want to constantly make the enemy adjust to you. And this is where light tanks can become extremely frustrating to fight. A heavy tank might be sitting on the front line, staring directly at your teammates. Meanwhile, you've already driven around the side of the map and are now sitting behind the entire enemy team. That's the kind of pressure you want to create. This leads into one of the biggest strengths of light tanks that I mentioned before: flanking. A good light tank flank or a rush can completely change the game. You don't necessarily have to destroy 5 or 6 tanks. Sometimes, simply getting into the enemy's backline is enough. Maybe you kill a tank that's watching a choke point. Maybe you force 3 enemy players to turn around and deal with you. Maybe you start capturing a point behind them. Or maybe you simply make them scared to push because they don't know where you're gonna appear from next. All of these things help your team succeed and win a match. And that's something I think a lot of players don't understand. Your impact isn't always gonna show up on the scoreboard, especially in the light tank role. You might finish the game with 2 kills and 5 assists, but you could have been one of the biggest reasons your team won the game. Another really useful thing light tanks can do is decap capture points. And this is something I think more players should take advantage of. If the enemy team is holding a capture point, you don't necessarily have to fully capture it yourself. Sometimes simply getting onto the point and resetting their capture progress is enough. You can drive in or even drive through and decap the point and get immediately out afterwards. That can help your team tremendously. You have to really think about what you're actually doing here. You're forcing the enemy to stop what they're doing because maybe they're pushing your teammates. Maybe they're trying to capture another objective. Now suddenly, they have to turn around and deal with you or find out who's behind them. And because you're in a light tank, you can often get out of there before they even have a chance to actually kill you. You're not there to sit on one point and defend it with your life. You're there to disrupt the enemy team's momentum. Sometimes, a few second decap can buy your team enough time to completely change the situation on the battlefield. And this is probably one of the most important things to understand about light tanks, that you're not necessarily supposed to get a ton of kills. Of course, you can get a ton of kills, and you absolutely should take kills when they're available, but your primary objective should be supporting your team. You need to scout enemy players, get assists, help your teammates find targets, flank enemy positions, decap capture points, and distract enemies. Force them to turn their turrets away from your teammates and create opportunities for your team to advance the front line. If you're scouting an enemy tank and your teammate destroys it, you might not get the kill for that, but you still directly contributed and heavily influenced your teammate's ability to get that kill. If you flank an enemy position and force two tanks to turn around, you've helped your team even if you don't fire a single shot. That's the mindset you need to have in this role. Don't look at the scoreboard and think, I only have 2 kills. I'm useless. I'm doing nothing for my team. You might actually be doing more for your team than the guy sitting in the middle of the map with 6 kills. Now, obviously, there's a pretty significant downside to playing this way. You are a light tank, and that usually means you pretty much have about 1 HP the entire game. While maybe technically you have more than 1 HP, it sure doesn't feel like it. Light tanks generally aren't known for having amazing armor. And while there's a famous saying, no armor is best armor, there are limits to that saying. Because while an AP shell or even some APC-BC shells might completely overpenetrate you and not detonate and do surprisingly little damage to you even if they do, there are plenty of things that will absolutely ruin your day. HE rounds, machine guns, bombs, and artillery. Anything that explodes near you will kill you, because then suddenly your light tank is gone. Which ties me into my next point. This is why you have to be careful with your positioning. You can't play like you're invincible just because you're fast. Your speed is your armor. Your positioning is your armor. Your ability to disappear before the enemy can react is your armor. If you're sitting in an open field trading shots with an enemy tank, you're doing something very wrong. Your best defense is simply do not be where the enemy expects you to be. If an enemy tank sees you, don't sit there and give them an opportunity to line up and shoot you, or even call out your position. Move. If artillery gets called out on your position, just assume they know you're there. If you see an enemy plane coming towards you, get under cover and run. If you think you're about to get flanked, relocate immediately. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to pin down and kill. Now, because you don't have the armor to survive these crucial mistakes, you have to rely heavily on your awareness. You should constantly be asking yourself, who knows where I am? Where are the enemy tanks? And where can I go next? But most importantly, ask yourself constantly, what's my escape route? That one is extremely important. Before you commit to a flank, always think about how you're going to get out if you need to, because getting into an enemy's backline is only half the job. Getting back out alive is the other half. You don't want to drive behind 6 enemy tanks and suddenly realize, oh, I'm trapped. Your mobility is incredibly powerful, but only if you have somewhere to use it. Now, despite everything I've said, I don't want you to think that light tanks should just sit in the back and scout out game, because that's not really what I'm saying. There are moments where you should be extremely aggressive. If you see an opportunity to rush an enemy position and catch them completely off guard, take it. If the enemy team is distracted fighting your teammates, that's your opportunity right there. If you can get behind 3 or 4 enemy tanks, that's another opportunity. If you can rush a capture point and decap it before anyone notices, that's your opportunity. Light tanks are extremely good at taking advantage of moments where the enemy is vulnerable. The important part is recognizing when you do have that opportunity. Don't rush just because you can. Rush because there's a reason to. Finally, one of the most underrated things light tanks bring to the battlefield is information. Scouting might not feel as exciting as getting a kill, but knowing where the enemy is can completely change how your team plays. If you can scout an enemy tank before your teammate engages it, you've already given them an advantage. If you discover that the enemy team has completely abandoned one side of the map, that's valuable information. Or even if you find 3 enemy tanks sitting behind a building waiting for your team, now your teammates know to not blindly push that position. You're acting basically as your team's eyes. And the more information you feed them, the easier it becomes for everyone else to make good decisions and bring you to a win. So if you're going to play light tanks effectively, you need to change how you think about success. Don't just ask, how many kills did I get, or how much score did I get. Ask, how much did I disrupt the enemy team? Were you scouting enemies? Did you get assists? Did you decap a point? Did you force enemies to turn around? Did you flank? Did you make the enemy reposition? Or did you create an opening for your teammates? If the answer to those questions is yes, then you most likely did your job, even if the scoreboard doesn't necessarily show it. So if I had to summarize the light tank playstyle into one sentence, it would be this. Don't try to be the strongest player on the battlefield. Try to be the most annoying one. You're fast, you're mobile, you can flank, you can scout, you can decap objectives, and you can get behind enemy lines, and you constantly reposition to keep the enemy guessing. Again, you're basically Tracer. You don't need to kill everyone, you just need to make it difficult for the enemy team to comfortably do their job. And yes, you're probably gonna die to an HE shell every once in a while, you're going to get machine gun, you're going to get bombed, and you're going to get hit by artillery and wonder how it even killed you. That's just part of playing a vehicle with pretty much 1 HP. But when you get that perfect flank, or you scout half the enemy team, you decap a point, get a few assists, and force some enemy players to turn around and chase you while your team pushes the other side of the map, that's when you understand what light tanks are actually all about. You're not necessarily the spearhead, but you sure are the distraction that makes the spearhead possible. I hope this video helps some of you guys get into light tanks, as it is one of my favorite roles to play in this game. So if this helped you out in any way, please drop a like and a comment, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as leave a comment down below for any further tips for anyone else that's coming back behind you, so that way we can get more people to play the light tank role, because I think it is one of the most crucial roles to winning a match in this game. But without further ado, I'm gonna get out of you guys' hair. Hope you have a blessed day and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.